There was a man named Michael who had spent a long time standing in front of the same closed door. Not a real wooden door in a house, but the kind of door people face in life when they keep trying and nothing seems to move. He had tried to build a better future for years. He had applied for work, prayed for help, asked for guidance, and done his best to stay faithful. Still, the answers came slowly. Some opportunities passed him by. Some plans fell apart. Some people promised help and never returned. Some days, he felt he was knocking on a door that had no one behind it. Michael lived a simple life. He did not have much, but he had responsibility. He helped his family. He worked with honesty. He tried to carry himself, well, even when his heart felt tired. What hurt him the most was not only the waiting. It was the feeling that the waiting might never end. He would look at other people moving ahead and wonder why his own life felt delayed. He did not say these thoughts out loud very often, but they lived inside him. They made him restless. They made him tired. They made him question whether he was missing something important. Each morning, he woke up with hope that the day might bring change. Each evening, he went to bed with another day behind him and the same question still in front of him. He kept knocking, but nothing seemed to open. He kept praying, but the silence sometimes felt long. He kept believing, but the path stayed unclear. This is where many people grow weak. Not when life becomes loud, but when life stays quiet for too long. Quiet can test a person deeply. Quiet can make waiting feel like failure. Quiet can make a good heart feel forgotten. One evening, after another long day, Michael sat on the steps outside his house. The air was cool, and the sky above him had already turned dark. He rested his elbows on his knees and looked at the ground. He was tired in a way that sleep could not fix. He felt like his hope had been stretched thin by too many delays. He had done everything he knew to do, and still he felt stuck. That was when a thought came to him gently, almost like a whisper in his heart. The door you have been knocking on is opening. He did not hear it with his ears, but he felt it deeply. It was not a wild feeling. It was calm. It did not make noise. It brought peace. He sat there for a long time, letting the words settle inside him. He began to wonder if the problem had never been that the door was dead or impossible. Maybe the problem was that he could not see what was happening on the other side. Maybe something was moving there already. Maybe the opening had begun before he recognized it. This changed something in him. The next day was still ordinary. Nothing dramatic happened. The bills were still there. The responsibilities were still there. The uncertainty was still there. But Michael no longer looked at his life in the same way. Before, he saw only delay. Now he began to understand that delay is not always denial. Sometimes delay is preparation. Sometimes it is protection. Sometimes it is the quiet work of God arranging things that a person cannot yet see. He began to pay more attention to the way he was living. He noticed that waiting had made him lazy in some places and fearful in others. At times he had stopped trying too hard because he assumed nothing would change. He had stopped expecting good things because disappointment had taught him to be careful. But now he saw that this attitude was slowly closing his own heart. He was knocking on a door while also doubting the one who could open it. That realization made him sit still for a while. He knew he needed to change his way of thinking, so he started to treat his waiting differently. Instead of waiting like someone defeated, he began waiting like someone preparing. He cleaned up the things he had neglected. He got more serious about his habits. He woke up earlier. He stopped wasting hours on things that made him more tired. He became more careful with his words. He began speaking hope over his life instead of only frustration. This did not remove the pressure, but it gave him a better way to carry it. Some people around him did not understand change. They thought he was simply being quiet or serious. But inside, he was rebuilding his spirit. He was learning that if a door is opening, a person must be ready to walk through it. It is not enough to ask for an open door. A person must also grow into the moment of opening. Michael realized that a waiting season can shape the kind of person who is able to hold what comes next. He thought back to the many times life had nearly changed. A few job opportunities had come close, but not closed. A few relationships had begun, but not lasted. A few chances had slipped away. He used to treat all of these as proof that life was against him. Now, he wondered if they were simply part of a larger process. Perhaps some things had to close because they were not the right fit. Perhaps some delays had protected him from choices he was not ready to carry. Perhaps the closed door was not the end of the road, but the beginning of a better one. This new perspective gave him strength. As the weeks passed, Michael kept doing what he could. He did not sit still doing nothing. He sent out more applications. He followed up with people in a respectful way. He learned new skills in his free time. He took care of his responsibilities at home. He tried to become a better version of himself while still waiting. That is an important part of guidance. Faith is not passive. Faith moves. Faith keeps going. Faith prepares. Faith acts with patience and trust together. He also began to pray differently. Before, most of his prayers were cries from exhaustion. Now he still prayed honestly, but there was more trust in his heart. He asked God to help him stay ready. He asked for wisdom to know when to wait and when to move. He asked for peace so that he would not grow bitter. He asked for courage so that he would not quit too soon. He asked for favor, but he also asked for character. He understood now that an open door is not only about receiving something. It is about becoming someone who can walk through it well. One morning, something small happened. It did not look like a miracle to anyone else, but to Michael it felt meaningful. A person he had once helped reached out to him with an opportunity. It was not the final answer to everything, but it was a beginning. It was a step. It was a movement. He felt a quiet joy rise in him. Not because all his problems were solved, but because he could see the first sign that the door was no longer only a door in his imagination. It was becoming a real opening in his life. He moved carefully. He did not celebrate too early. He had learned that hope must be steady, not careless. But he also did not deny the blessing when it came. He accepted it with gratitude and humility. He understood that many doors open gradually. First there is a crack, then a small opening, then a wider path, then a full entrance. Life often works in stages. People want the final result all at once, but God often begins with a small opening that teaches trust. Michael entered that season with a different heart. He worked with more purpose. He listened more carefully. He stayed disciplined. He no longer looked at every setback as a final answer. He had learned to read life with more wisdom. A closed door no longer meant rejection to him. Sometimes it meant not yet. Sometimes it meant preparing more. Sometimes it meant trust more. Sometimes it means something better is being arranged. The old fear still visited him now and then. That is normal. Growth does not erase every old feeling immediately. But the fear no longer ruled him. He learned to answer fear with truth. When fear said, "Nothing is happening," he reminded himself that God can work in hidden ways. When fear said, "You are too late," he remembered that timing in God's hands is different from timing in human hands. When fear said, "This will never open," he answered, "I've seen too much grace to believe that lie." He also noticed a change in how he carried himself around others. He was less desperate and more grounded. Before, he had sometimes tried too hard to prove that he deserved help. Now he understood that dignity comes from steady faithfulness. He did not need to beg life to notice him. He needed to keep showing up and let the character speak. That change made a difference in how others saw him. People trusted him more because he seemed calm, consistent, and honest. A few months later, the opportunity he had been quietly hoping for became clearer. A real door opened in his life. It was not the kind that solves everything instantly, but it was the kind that changes direction. He was given a chance that matched the long waiting, the long praying, the long effort. When he received the news, he sat still for a moment before speaking. He thought of all the times he had stood in front of closed doors and wondered whether he had been forgotten. Now he could see that the waiting had not been wasted. It had been working on him, even when he could not see it. He accepted the opportunity with gratitude, but he did not forget the lessons from the waiting season. He knew that opening doors requires responsibility. He knew that the same faith that helped him wait would now need to help him handle what came next. He understood that blessings are not only for celebration, they're also for stewardship. A person must learn how to protect what God opens. As he stepped into the new season, he kept the same humble spirit. He remembered the long nights, the silent prayers, and the heavy mornings. He remembered that he had once wanted to force the door open through panic. But now he knows that some doors open when the time is right, not when fear demands it. That understanding stayed with him. It made him stronger, wiser, and gentler. Michael also became more patient with others who were still waiting. He no longer judged people for being slow or stuck. He knew what waiting could do to the heart. He knew how easy it is to lose hope when the answer does not come quickly. So he began speaking with kindness. He reminded others that a delay is not always a denial. He told them that sometimes a door is opening in ways they cannot yet see. He encouraged them to keep going without losing faith. His words mattered because they came from real experience. He was not speaking from theory. He was speaking from the place of man who had knocked long enough to understand that persistence matters. He knew that God's timing is wise, even when it feels slow. He knew that open doors often come after a period of hidden preparation. He knew that a person who keeps trusting during the waiting is often being shaped for what comes next. The deeper lesson in his story was not only about opportunity, it was about trust. Michael learned that he did not have to force every outcome. He did not have to panic when life was quiet. He did not have to assume silence meant absence. He learned to trust that something can be moving even when it is not visible. That trust gave him peace. He also learned not to compare his process with anyone else's. This was one of the hardest lessons. Comparison can make a waiting person feel cursed when they're actually being prepared. He saw that many people around him had different timelines, different burdens, and different doors. Some opened early, some opened late, some opened in unexpected ways. None of that meant one life was better than another. It simply meant each path was different. Once he accepted that, he stopped measuring himself against everyone else. He became more thankful for small signs of progress. A helpful conversation, a new skill, a piece of encouragement, a moment of peace, a small step forward. These things mattered. They were not small in the way that people often think. They were part of the opening. They were the early movements of a door that had been locked in the natural, but was already shifting in the unseen. Years later, Michael would look back and understand that the waiting season had been one of the most valuable parts of his life. It taught him patience. It taught him humility. It taught him how to hear God in quiet places. It taught him how to work without rushing. It taught him that open doors are best appreciated by those who once waited outside them. He no longer saw the closed door as wasted time. He saw it as the place where his character was strengthened. The truth of his story became a simple message for anyone standing in a long season of waiting. Keep knocking, but do not let knocking become bitterness. Keep praying, but do not let prayer become panic. Keep hoping, but do not let hope become fantasy. Keep working, but do not let work become pride. Stay ready. Stay humble. Stay faithful. The door that has seemed silent may already be moving. Sometimes opening begins before you see it. Sometimes the handle turns slowly. Sometimes the answer comes in stages. Sometimes what feels like delay is only the first part of the opening. That is why patience matters. That is why faith matters. That is why steady obedience matters. A person who remains faithful in the waiting is often standing right in front of the moment they have been asking for. Michael's story is not unusual in the sense that many people live some version of it. Many people knock on doors that cannot open. Many people pray over promises they cannot yet see. Many people sit in silence and wonder whether anything is changing. This is why the message is important. God does not waste waiting. He uses it. He shapes through it. He prepares through it. And when the right time comes, the door opens in a way that makes the waiting make sense. So if your heart is tired from knocking, do not stop yet. If the answer has been slow, do not assume it is gone. If the path has been quiet, Do not call it finished. Stay ready. Keep your heart clean. Keep your mind steady. Keep your hands working. Keep your faith alive. The door you've been knocking on is opening, and when it opens, it will not be by accident. It will be at the right time, in the right way, with the right purpose. That is the message Michael learned. That is the guidance in his journey. The waiting was not the ending. The silence was not the end. The closed door was not the final word. It was only the place where trust was being tested and a better opening was being prepared. And when the door finally began to open, he walked through it with gratitude, wisdom, and peace.